This missile launched at 10:41 a.m. Wall Street time. What have we learned since then about the missile that was launched?
Hey, David. The Pentagon just confirmed now that they after their assessment, that this was an ICBM. So, as you said, it's the second time North Korea has launched an intercontinental ballistic missile. Their ultimate goal is to be able to launch one of those missiles, or have a missile that could launch with a warhead on it and reach the United States. They still have a ways to go on some parts of that technology, but what's obvious from the launches this month is that North Korea is making pretty significant strides in their efforts.
Bill, you and your team have been scrambling since that launch. What's the response been thus far, particularly in the region itself?
Well, we know that a South Korean president called an emergency meeting of the South Korean National Security Council. The Pentagon and Japanese officials have been trying to get as much information as they can glean on that test. And I would be surprised, frankly, if there's not some sort of an emergency session at the UN Security Council. That said, the Trump administration, Japan and South Korea have not had a lot of luck getting North Korea to rein in their program, or getting China to weigh in to help rein in what North Korea seems determined to do, which is develop a missile that can hit the United States.
The Pentagon, I gather, promising to work on a more detailed assessment of what happened earlier today. What can we expect in terms of response from the Pentagon? Would we likely to hear from the Pentagon? And I imagine this might be something that the UN could consider as well.
Right. Earlier this year, the U.S. really began deploying a regional missile defense system in South Korea. There was some controversy over that. I think there's going to start to be a lot of questions about how well either U.S., Japanese, or South Korean-based systems would respond in terms of being able to knock something like this down if it were an actual attack. This missile, from what we know from the Pentagon, flew about 1,000 kilometers, landed somewhere in the Sea of Japan. I think we're gonna learn a lot more about this test. It just took place 3 hours ago. But we've already seen this year that North Korea has, under Kim Jong-un, has tested more missiles than his father did in over 15 years in office. So it's a definite test for the Trump administration.
Let me shift gears here to ask you about some diplomatic tension that's been emerging today as well. Of course, the House and the Senate both passed a new sanctions package that affects Russia, limits the president's ability to scale back sanctions on Russia in particular. What did Russia say it intends to do with regard to its diplomatic relationship to the U.S. earlier today, and how's the U.S. responded to that?
Well, Russia announced that it's going to expel a considerable number of diplomats from the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. We don't have an exact number, and the State Department typically doesn't talk about overall numbers of people staffing their missions. But the figures we're talking about is potentially 100 or hundreds of diplomats being expelled from Moscow in retaliation. This is, from Russia's eyes, a response to what happened at the very end of the Obama administration, when about 35 Russian diplomats were expelled over the meddling in the 2016 presidential election. But Russia's step seems to be going much further. I think the big picture here is that the détente that President Donald Trump seemed to want with Russia when he took office is probably dead for now.